Welcome! In this series of short videos, we will look at topics for the PowerBasic Windows Compiler. Today we will look again at using the Windows Form Designer and adding more controls to our form. This was our application at the end of the last video. We have created a relatively simple form, with 3 labels and 3 text boxes, and a couple of buttons, and an additional label control to be used for feedback for what the user enters on our form. Today we're going to be adding more controls to this form, so let's go and have a look at our code. If we press the F2 button, we can see all the functions, macros and callback functions in our application. The PB main function is the first function that PowerBasic will execute when your application runs. Within this, we're setting up a global font. We're also setting the dialog's default font and showing the first and only form. And after that form is completed and closed down, we're clearing up our font by ending it, and then the application itself will end. So we're going to jump straight into the Forms Designer to add more controls to our form. In the menu bar, we go to Tools and click on PowerBasic Forms. This will launch the Forms Designer, and there is our form in design format. And we can see over on the right hand side we have a window which has a number of different types of controls on it. So we're going to create a little bit of room on our form and add a new control. So we'll move the Submit button down. So in order to add a new control to our form, we will go to our toolbox. On our toolbox, we have an object called ComboBox. If we double click on that, it will add it to the form. If we drag that down onto our screen, we now have a new ComboBox on the screen. I'm going to clone one of the existing labels so we can have a label for this new object. Control C, Control V, and we will move our label into position. And there we have it. So we're going to use these 2 new objects to allow the user to select a department for this new member of staff. So we will name our label Label Department. And we're going to do the same for our combo box. We don't need a caption for this one, and we'll call this CBO Department. If we just accept the defaults and hit OK. And we will widen this control to match the others on our screen. So we now have a new control on our form. If we save that and go and have a look at that in the code. And if we go to the function which displays our dialog and scroll down, we will see there is now an entry to add a combo box called Department. And there is also an entry for a label called Label Department. If we run the application now, we will see there is our department label and there is our combo box. We haven't put any data into the combo box yet, but we'll do that shortly. So as we can see, we need to make the department label larger. So if we go into the callback function, the event handler of our form, and we're going to add on another entry to our prefix setting here where we're setting the font. This will make our label for the department the same size as all the others. So we now need to look at how we populate the data within this particular control. So further down this section of the initialization, we're going to call a new function to populate our departments list. And we'll call that new function populate departments. This we will give 2 parameters, the handle of the dialog and the handle of our combo box which we wish to populate. So let's go and create this new function. So here is the skeleton of our new function, populate departments, taking its 2 parameters. I have dimensioned an array in here for 5 elements, because we're going to be adding 5 departments. And we will use the array assign command to set up each of these departments. So we have marketing, finance, HR, facilities, and IT. These were the 5 departments we want appearing on this drop-down list. So we now need to add each of the 5 entries into this combo box. At the moment, the combo box is completely empty. But we may want to, at some point in the future, repopulate the box. Therefore, the best thing to do is to reset the combo box initially to ensure that it is indeed empty. So we can use the ComboBox reset command to perform that function. This command takes only 2 parameters, the handle of the dialog and the handle of the combo box, which we had passed in as parameters to this function. Next, we're going to do a for next loop for each element within our array to populate the combo box. So we will declare a local variable to allow us to do that, and we're going to be using a for next loop. So within our for next loop, which is going from 1 to the upper bounding of our departments array, which in this case we know is 5 elements, and we're using the ComboBox add command. It takes 3 parameters, the handle of the dialog, the handle of the combo box, and the text string that you wish to place into this combo box. So if we try running our application now, we will look at the combo box and we'll see that it does indeed have 5 entries on it. However, you will note that the 5 entries are sorted alphabetically. But when you look back at the code, you can see that the 5 entries in the array are not in alphabetical order. So somehow the combo box has sorted them automatically into alphabetic ascending order. So since the array contains departments which are not in alphabetical order, and the form has them in alphabetical order, obviously something on the combo box is automatically sorting them. So let's have a look at the form designer. If we double click on the combo box and have a look at styles, we'll see that one of the entries in the styles is CBS sort, and it is ticked. So by default, the combo box automatically sorts items added to the list. So regardless of the order you add them to the combo box, if this is ticked, will sort them in ascending alphabetical order. So this may be exactly what you want in your combo box. However, it may not. If it is not what you want, then you'll have to go in here and untick CBS sort. If this is unticked, then the order in which you add your strings to the combo box will be the order they're displayed to the user. So for the moment, we'll just leave this sorted. So if we click on the test dialog item on the toolbar, this will allow us to do some testing. It puts test items in for you, and you can select one item from the list. The combo box is a mechanism by which you can allow the user to select one and only one entry from the list. However, as you can see, we can type in to this list, so we can add items which are not on the list. This may be necessary in some applications which you create. You may want the user to add something to the list that is not on the list. However, if you do not want this, there's another option. So let's exit the test mode and go back into the options. We'll see on the left-hand side there is an entry here with 3 options. Currently it is marked as CBS dropdown. If we click on that, there's an explanation at the bottom of this dialog. We have currently got a combination of text box and drop-down list box controls. This means, being a text box, the user can type into it. If we want a drop-down list, if we change it to that, this is a combination of label and drop-down list box controls. This means the user can select from the list, but they cannot overtype it. So if you do not want the user to type in something that is not on the list, select drop-down list. If we OK that, and go back to our testing again, we'll see that they can pick something from the list, but they cannot type something else in. So we'll leave our form in that format. So if we save that, and go back to our application, and run the application once more. And there is our department list. So we can pick facilities, but we cannot type in something other than what's on our list. The other thing to watch when we are designing applications using the Forms Designer is if we go to the very first field, the title field, and then press Tab, it goes to the name field, the age field, and then it goes to submit. It has skipped over the department. If we press the tab once more, it will go to the finance one and then eventually to exit. For ease of use, you will find it useful to tab through the fields one at a time, in the same way the user would actually enter the data. So how can we get this tab problem sorted out? Let's go back to the Forms Designer. Once the form has loaded up, you'll see on the toolbar there is an entry here for tab order. If we click on this, it will label each of the tabs. Now in this case, we're only interested in the fields where the user can actually interact with them. We're not interested in the labels. So if we click on the first text field, it becomes number 1, then the next, and then the last one, our combo box, and then the submit button, and then the exit button. And if we close that and press test, we can now tab through the fields in the order that we want to put them in and save back to our application. And if we run it once more, we'll see that our tab order has now been corrected. So what has the Forms Designer actually done to achieve this? If we have a look at the function where our dialog is designed, you will notice that it has actually changed the order which these entries have been put in. The combo box is now before the buttons, and the submit button is before the exit button. So the order these entries are done in the dialog new command determines the tab order. And all the labels have been put at the end. You may quite possibly have a number of these combo boxes on a form. And if you have multiple forms, some of the other forms will also probably have combo boxes. So if we go back to our populate departments function, and we're going to change this slightly. This section of the code here, where we're populating the combo box, is likely to be reused several times within your application. So we're going to break this out to a generic function. We'll comment these lines of code out, and we're going to create a new function whose job it will be to populate a combo box with the contents of an array. And we'll call this new function populate combo, giving it 3 parameters: the handle of the dialog, the handle of the combo box, and the array which we're going to use to populate that combo box. And here is our new function, populate combo, taking its 3 parameters. And we've just taken the code we had in our original function and pasted it in here and made a few changes. We're taking in the parameters and using them to reset the combo box. And then we're using a for next loop for each element in the array and using the combo box add command to add that string to that combo box. So if we run our application now, our department appears quite happily exactly as it did before. But we now have the addition of a generic function that can be used to populate any combo box on any form with any array data. So we'll need to update our validate function for this form. But before we do that, we're going to add on one more object. The object we have just added allows the user to select one item from a list of items. What happens if you wish to allow the user to select multiple items on a list? For this, we'll need to use a ListBox. So once more, back to the Form Designer. So on our toolbox, we can then look to see if we have a ListBox object, and we do. And if we double click on that, there is our ListBox. We can adjust its size and its position on screen. And we're going to clone one of our labels again. And we'll put that in here. And we're going to use this for a working pattern. For our new starts, it's quite possible that some of them may be working different shift patterns. And we'll name our list box accordingly. And we will save that and go back to the code. So just to be sure again, we will go through the exercise of setting the tab order on our objects on screen to make sure we don't have the same problems we had with the combo box. And save that once more. And now we can go back to the code. So before we do validation, let's go and populate this working patterns list box. If we go back to the event handler, we're going to create a new function whose job it will be to populate this list box. And there is the call to our new populate working patterns function. And here is the function to populate our working patterns, taking its two parameters, the dialog handle and the handle of the list box. We are again creating a local array, in this case having 3 items, to contain the strings for our working patterns, and we're using the array assign command to assigning them to the array. In this case we'll have shift 3, shift 2 and shift 1. And we're going to make sure the user can actually select more than one of these. So the possibilities are selecting 1, selecting 2, or possibly selecting all 3. And we're going to create a new function to populate the list box with the data from this array. And here is our new function to populate the list box, taking in its 3 parameters. And as we did before, we're using a local variable to allow us to step through each of the elements in the array. First of all, we're using a listbox reset command, just as we did a ComboBox reset before, to ensure that the list box is empty. And then a for next loop for each element of the array, using the listbox add command, exactly as we did with the ComboBox. So if we run our application now, we should see there are 3 entries on the working patterns one. However, at the moment, it's only allowing the user to select 1 item at a time. So if we pop back to our form designer, there's another option we can use to allow multi-select. So if we double click on the list box and go to styles, we'll see at the moment it's set for single select. We have 3 other options. We have a no select, which allows the user to see items but not select them. We have multiple select, which allows multiple item selections. This is the one we're interested in. The additional one allows selection of multiple items in the list box with the aid of the shift key. We'll leave it for the moment as multiple select. So if we hit OK on that, and save our dialog once more, and once that's saved, we go back to our code. If we run the code once more, and we have a look at our working pattern, we can now select all 3, any 2, or just the 1. And our working pattern label does not appear to be displaying properly. So let's go back to the code and check that in our event handler. We haven't added that to the list yet. Now, the final thing we have to do is to expand on our validation function. A validation function is what is used to ensure that the user has actually selected everything on the form correctly. So if we move down to the end, we'll need to put a bit of code in here to allow us to actually validate these 2 new objects. So first of all, we will add 2 entries to the top of our local variables. One for the department and one for the working pattern. So in our control get text section, we can add the combo box on quite easily. As the combo box is a single select, we can use the control get text to get the selected text from the combo box. If the combo box has not been selected, then the department variable will contain no data. It will be an empty length string. However, the list box is a little more complicated. For the working pattern, I'm going to create a function called getLBValues. This will return a string which will be all the data that has been selected. We're giving it 2 parameters, the dialog handle and the listbox handle. So let's go and create this new function. So here is the skeleton of our new function to get the listbox values, taking its 2 parameters. I've created a number of local variables. The first one, countSelected, will count the number of items that have been selected by the user. If the number of items selected is 0, then we can assume the user has selected nothing. We're going to have to step through each of the items that the user has selected and add it on to a list. And this is our next variable, the list of what's been selected. This will be the combination of all the items selected. And the final variable, strText, is going to be the text on the specifically selected item, as we're going to step through them one at a time. So our first task is to use the ListBox getCellCount. This will return the number of items that the user has selected. And if this value is 0, then we know nothing has been selected. Therefore, the function will return an empty len string. Otherwise, we know the user has selected at least one item. So we can get the very first item that they've selected by using a ListBox getSelectItem. It will look at the list box starting from the first element of the list box, and it will pass anything it selects to here. So if the user selects the first item, the item selected variable will contain the value 1. If the user has selected the second item, then the item selected variable will contain the value 2. And so on. So we're going to do a loop here, a while loop. While the item selected is greater than 0, we're going to step through and get the text by using the ListBox getText command. So assuming this brings back some number, we will use that number to pull back that specific text. And we can now add this to the running list by adding it to the list of selected strings. And we're going to make this a comma delimited list. And we can then increment the item selected so that we go on and pick up the next one on the loop, by again using the ListBox getSelect to get the next one. Should this return a number greater than 0, then we will repeat this section of code. If the item is 0, then we will exit the while loop. And having exited the while loop, we can then trim off the last comma. So this will give us the list of what the user has actually selected. So back to the validation routine. So we now have the department the user has selected, if any, and the working pattern that they have also selected. So now we can make tests against those two variables. First of all, we can test the department. If the department is a 0 len string, then we're going to call our macro once more, just as we did before, but this time to say that no department has been picked. And we'll exit the function immediately. If the department does have something, we're making sure that the highlighting on the label for department has been cleared. And we can do exactly the same for the working pattern. If the working pattern is a 0 len string, then nothing has been selected, and we can output that to our feedback. Otherwise, we will make sure the highlight has been cleared on the label. And after that, we want to push this new information out to the feedback output label by adding it on to the output variable. So if we attempt to run our application now, we can now enter in the data to our form. And if we just hit submit at this point and not put a department in, it will complain that no department has been picked. So we'll pick a department, hit submit once more, and it will complain that the working pattern has not been selected. So we will select 1, and we'll have 1 entry. If we select 2 entries, we have Shift 2 and Shift 3. And if we pick Shift 1, we get 1, 2, and 3. So in summary, what we've achieved today is we've added 2 new controls to our form. We have a single select department combo box, allowing the user to select one item from a list. We have also added a list box to allow the user to add one or more items from another list. And we're validating both of these new controls as we did before. So with this approach, you can build up quite complex forms in your applications. Hopefully you'll find this useful in your own applications, but that's it for today. Thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching today's video. Please feel free to click on the link in the description below to discover more videos.